Hello and welcome back to another episode of Streaming School. Thank you very much for joining us once again. I'm really pleased to have my good friend and fellow Arsenal fan, Mr. Gary Orbin, back online with us to deliver another wonderful session. A very good morning to you, Gary.
Good morning, Lois. How are you?
I'm really well, buddy. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Looking forward to it.
Brilliant. Well, the floor is yours, as they say, and enjoy.
Thanks ever so much. Nice to see everyone. Good morning. So this is our 11th lesson. We've talked about acting, directing. We've had a series of lessons on various aspects of design. Some of them I love, some of them I don't love so much, but you need to be able to write about a wide range of design elements if you are going to be able to do really well in your GCSE drama exams, or even when you're studying for A-level and using these videos as a bit of revision. So I will prepare you today to talk about set and props. I'll just open up the presentation. Now, can you think about what the role of a set designer is while I'm just getting this ready? What does a set designer have to do? What kind of questions do they have to ask? And what can they achieve as a set designer? So, today's lesson in the Designer's Toolkit, set and props. Now, let's start with a little quote here. This is what is set design. It's from Harvard University in America, from their Students' Technical Theatre Handbook. Okay, set design is an important part of almost any theatre production, as almost every show will utilize some sort of set, however minimal. Sets can be abstract, highly realistic, or anything in between, and they're a chance for a designer to showcase interesting concepts, new techniques, and unusual materials. The primary function of a set, of course, is to provide the audience with some context for the play, but it can also be a chance to create something stunning to draw in the audience. So the first bit there is about the set can tell you where it is, when the play is taking place, etc. But also it can be visually really beautiful, and of course it can help to set mood and things. Okay, the next bullet point, the most important thing to remember as a set designer is to be innovative and original. Inspiration can come from almost anything or any place, and you should never stop thinking about creative ways to help tell a story. We talk every session about interpretation. As a set designer, you interpret and you work out what it is you want to say and how you're going to say it. As set designer, you not only have to create a concept that is in line with the director's vision, but you also have to decide how it will be built, painted, and decorated. The look of the stage as a whole is largely your responsibility, and it can be as interesting as your imagination and ingenuity can make it. Okay, there's a good point there about working alongside the director. You cannot work in isolation as a set designer. You need to make sure that you're lining up with the overall creative vision that's set by the director, of course. You will have exam questions like, as a designer, explain your ideas for set and props within this extract. So I've included set and props. Most of this session we're talking about set, but props are often included in this type of question as well. And my tip there for you really is, if it says set and props, make sure you do something on set type of props. So it will be largely on set, probably, with some mention of props there as well. Okay, so as always with these design sessions, you need to start with what do you want your production to say? Okay, not just, I really like this color or this type of furniture, but what am I trying to communicate to an audience? So, for example, there's a play called The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. It's a wonderful play. It came from a wonderful book. You may know it. It's about a child with autism. It doesn't specify he's got autism, but he is quite clearly an autistic teenage boy. So if you're doing a play about a child with autism and you've got your set designer, well, think firstly, what do you want to communicate? Do you want to show that an autistic mind likes neatness and order? And then how do you reflect that in your set design? Do you want to show that the world is confusing for someone with autism? How do you show that in your set design? Do you want to say that familiar surroundings provide comfort for someone with autism? Or do you want to say that cities are chaotic and unsettling for someone with autism? So whatever it is that you're trying to say, you've got to first think, what do I want to say? And then we can talk about the tools that you have to help you to achieve that. Let's look at a couple of images here. So this is from The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. Now what you see there is that the set is largely quite bare, but what you have to do is really create a set that allows the lighting to really do all that communicating, to show that neatness and order in Christopher's mind, young man's mind. So by having quite a bare, quite an open set, they've thought quite carefully about the floor here and using various gaps in the floor, but really it achieved through lighting. But of course you need to have quite a bare set to allow that to be possible. And then in the same production, they use these blocks. So instead of having, you know, a sofa, having a bus stop, having some seats on a train, that would take a long time to take all that set on and off. It would slow the production right down. So instead, they've just got these 7, I think, white blocks, which the actors can sit on. They can stack them on top of one another. They can carry them like they're suitcases or something. So they can be multi-purpose. They can mean you can very quickly go from one location to the next. And that really key to set. That you wouldn't have lots of heavy pieces of stage furniture. You'd have these 9 blocks, which the audience will accept are representing various occasions. In the production that I saw, they also light up these boxes, so they're quite cool. But you can see they have set and lights work together. But also your options for set have very, very little. Allow the lights to do the work. Have things that are just representative and symbolize various locations, or you can go very naturalistic. So we've talked about Hedda Gabler before, a play written by Henrik Ibsen, set in the 1890s, and which is really at the height of naturalism, realism in drama, in theatre. And so the stages have sets that are very, very detailed, that are really trying to create that world for the audience. So you'll see, yeah, I mean, this doesn't even look like a set, as it looks like someone's actual very, very smart, very posh living room. But that is a theatre set. And you'll see they've gone, and this one as well, you see the emphasis really is on be careful bits of detail work and thinking about, well, that chair on the right side of the picture there, we need to make sure they look like they're someone from they match the rich property that this aristocratic family might have for the husband to be doing his work. And so you see how the set is very, very different to what they're trying to achieve. Yeah. Okay. Interpretation, it's up to you to make those decisions, of course. And so the first thing you're writing about in your exam is something like, as a set designer, I want to show that. And you start with what you want to communicate, i.e. one of these things potentially. Okay? Not even mentioning set particularly. You're just a key set to show something in particular. That's your point. Make it really clearly as your first sentence of a paragraph. Okay. And then what are the key decisions to be made with each of these design elements? So we're talking about 7 blocks, and on that left-hand column, I'll go through them each in turn, but you can refer to stage configuration, items of set, props, color, backdrops, flats, and levels. And then using certain props, you could show that there is a fourth wall, a clear barrier between the audiences or not. You could show the time period, the location, the mood of the play, the main themes within the play, and the theatre style, whether it's natural or abstract, for example. Okay, so let's start here with stage configuration. So really that means, where are the actors in relation to the audience? So traditionally, you have something that's a bit like this, proscenium arch theatre, and sometimes called N1. You've got the actors on the yellow bit, the yellow square there. There's the stage, and the audience are in front of them on only one side. Okay, proscenium arch theatre. Now, so many plays when you go and have this theatre layout, and then you can think about set from that point of view there. But there are many others. Okay, so traverse, audience on 2 sides. Thrust, I'm sure your drama teachers would have gone through this with you. Thrust, audience on 3 sides. And then arena staging, very similar to theatre in the round, which I love. If you think as a set designer about theatre in the round, well, there are some issues there. So the audience are on every single side here, aren't they? And the actors are in the middle. So if you put a big, huge bit of set right in the middle here, or on the stage left, let's call this, on this side here, there are issues with sight lines, okay? Let me see if I can write that clearly. If this technology is wonderful enough, sight lines. So you're thinking about where are, I'm not sure this is going to work. I look like a toddler doing it. There you go. Never mind. We'll undo that. But the sight lines there are important. So can the audience see, essentially, or have you blocked them from seeing the whole set, the whole stage? Okay, let's get with that. So you're going to think, when you're thinking as a set designer, you will mention the stage configuration, because that will affect the audience's sight lines, their lines of sight, and that will affect whether you have big pieces of set, no pieces of set, or somewhere in between. Okay, so the stage configuration. And then items of set we've talked about. I showed you this picture where they use items of set, i.e. there's blocks, bits of furniture, and they use them in quite a sort of representative and flexible way. There's a production here. I forget what this place is from, actually. I think it might be Medea, but you've got, they've just thought carefully about the furniture, about that sort of heavy, low leather chair they've got on the left-hand side there. So if you're thinking, I want a chair, you've got to think about, well, how do I want to describe that chair, and what kind of chair is it that this character is going to sit on in particular, and what does that show? And then in terms of items of set, thinking about those pictures from Hedda Gabler that I showed you before, very, very detailed and meticulous, clearly showing, what's it showing here? It's clearly showing the location, certainly, and then also showing the sort of background of this family, that they're wealthy, for example. Okay, props is the next thing here. Props are things, items of set really that are smaller, that can be held in your hand. That's your rule of thumb. If you can hold it in your hand, then it's a prop. And so I've just put these 5 examples on here. Props are infinite, of course, but if the prop that the playwright told you is the character walks on holding a light or holding a torch, I've just sort of put these 5 images up just to show you the amount of that word here, interpretation, that you need to do. So they're holding a torch or holding a light. What do you need to think? Is it one of those 5? And if so, which is it? Are they quite a rich family? In which case we might be looking at my bottom right-hand corner here, for example. If it's a sort of smart candlestick, the electricity's gone, that's what they pick up, perhaps, okay? Or is it someone who's quite practical, maybe, has a tool belt and a torch, always handy, that kind of thing? Is it set in the past, in which case we might be using this old-fashioned sort of lantern here? Or is it quite a smart family as well, but they're using a lantern again, but it's much more contemporary? Okay, so we're talking about props there, and the play might just say, comes on carrying a light. But of course, that's not it. As a set designer, writing a question about set and props, you might mention the type of light that it is. There's some examples there. Color is self-explanatory, but of course, it'll form a part of what you're saying. If you're talking about the set, either items of set, or looking at the floor that you've chosen for your set, or the walls for your set, you're thinking about what color you're being used there. So what colors you're using there, and of course you can light things. You can have things black, and then your stage lights will do the work there. And that's why the walls in theatres are often black, so that they can be lit in any way. Okay, so there are your sort of some color choices there. Backdrops. In the question about set, if you have not got the budget or the resource or the skill or the time or the people to be making very, very detailed bits of set, then you can project things. You can use projection and project images of things. Or one option you've got is to use a backdrop. So if you think about, a play, a Shakespearean play, and you're keeping it set in the 1600s, then this might be of interest to you. This is painting. This is a piece of cloth that's been painted very, very well, and that would hang on the back of your stage. So we talked about DNA before, a play largely set in the woods. You could have a projection of an image of woods, or you could have someone paint a picture of the woods there, of course, to show that. This one is in the desert, so you could cover your floor in sand and then have a backdrop there of, as you see in front of you there. And this one is, I think, from a piece of musical theatre, and it allows you to show that this play is set, in the past and in a city. That's what, and really, and in the evening. And they will be very, very useful things to set the scene there, all from one painted cloth. It's in the evening, it's in a city, and it's set in the past. Look at the types of lights and the types of buildings, for example. So a backdrop can achieve a lot there, really. And of course, if we go back to think about the stage configurations and how they're relevant, could you use a backdrop in all of these? No, you couldn't. You can use it certainly in proscenium arch, certainly in a thrust stage where the audience on 3 sides, but you certainly couldn't use it for theatre in the round, because of course it would block some of the audience. So you're thinking about how these things work together. Slats. Slats are great, are extremely commonly used, and are the most frequent way really of helping to set the location in a fairly naturalistic way, and even partly for non-naturalistic purposes as well. So if we look at what they're called, flats, let's look at what that is. They're pieces of wood, okay? Pieces of a thick sort of MDF or something that's made into a frame, and they're put up next to each other, often in a sort of diagonal almost shape there. So for the audience's sight lines, they get a sense that this is a room with walls, but putting those flats at right angles would affect the audience's sight lines. That means they wouldn't be able to see everything. placed diagonally, but they're bits of wood. And you see that the one on the left there has got a bit cut out of it for a door. Two of them have got I imagine the one on the far right is for a window, and the other one in the middle, that little white square in it, I suspect is cut out for something like a fireplace. So perhaps this is set in a home that's got a fireplace in their sitting room, perhaps. And then how that works, just for your interest really, is then it's got these things that the audience, when the audience is end on, just from one angle, they don't see these bits behind where those are the things that are keeping the flats from falling over again. And then you see what they can be made into. So these are some flats, if I zoom in there. So this set is entirely made using flats, and clearly a very, very clever and professional set designer setting all that up. And this one as well, very common. It looks like they've made a room there. What they've done, of course, is just use flats, put them in a certain shape, configuration to one another, and then they've covered those flats very beautifully in paint or wallpaper and cut bits out where they need to. So you could talk about creating a naturalistic set design using flats to create a box set of a living room, for example. So that's about the flats there. Levels as well is nothing for you to think of as a set design. So how do you want to use levels there to create different locations? I think this is the set design for Macbeth. And you see you've got the wood, burning wood in the background, and you've got the downstage area where that benches at the bottom of the picture that can be used for other scenes, and of course lighting would put this as well. And this, a production of an ancient Greek tragedy, Medea, and you've got very different areas of the stage there, down below and up above, with some stairs and the stage there. So they're really using levels to create different aspects of space that they might be able to transition quickly from this bottom bit up to the top bit, because there are different levels that allow them to do that. Okay, PE paragraphs. So this is the same as slide I've shown you before when you're writing about design. Your evidence, how do you do it? And then you explain why is making this point important, and then what impacts it have on the audience. And I've written a sample paragraph here for set design. So my point, as a designer, I would like to use sets to help characters quickly transition from one scene to another in order to represent both location and mood.
Gary,
so what am I?
Sorry to interrupt you, buddy. I'm just seeing the flashing G. Maybe you're in between apps rather than going to the app that you want to show.
Beg your pardon. Thanks very much. Do you know what it was? Someone very kindly called me, and so I just had to hang up on them quickly, and then I think I must have interrupted it. Is that better now? I think.
Yeah, it's just starting to load now. Thanks, Gal.
Thank you very much. No problem. So I've got my daughter with me here, just in the background. So my point there, as a designer, I'd like to use set to help characters quickly transition from one scene to another in order to represent both location and mood. Okay, so I've started by saying there what I'm trying to achieve. So I'm trying to show that set there can help me show location and mood. I don't just rush into I use flats and levels and colours and whatever. I start with my point. And then I move to my evidence. So when showing Christopher's journey to London, and this is from the Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, if you know it, when showing Christopher's journey to London, the scene quickly changes from a train station to the train itself and to the London Underground. Using multi-purpose white blocks from the images I showed you earlier in the lesson, which can be picked up and moved by an actor easily, I can rapidly create a representation of a different location, i.e. to have the blocks lined up like booths at a ticket office, then to quickly be placed in fours to represent seats on a train. So from set there, I've chosen not to talk about flats or levels or stage configuration particularly. They're all great things to talk about. I've chosen to focus on the bits of set, these blocks, and how I would use them. That's in my evidence. And then I'd explain. So a fast pace of scene change would communicate the chaotic world that Christopher inhabits when he visits unfamiliar places such as London. Using blocks to achieve this intense pace, perhaps working alongside changes in lighting, would allow the audience to understand this journey as being one that takes place manically for Christopher. The use of such pieces of set, therefore, helps the audience to understand how his autism prevents him from thriving in unfamiliar new surroundings. This is a grade 9 PEE here, if you really are aiming for high grades for yourself. And really all I've done there is the most important thing, be clear about what set can help me achieve, give a clear bit of evidence, and all I've said really is I'm using some blocks and moving them around from one bit to the next, but I've linked it very closely to the play, to a particular extract. And then in my explanation, I've just justified it. I've said it needs to be fast scene changes. These blocks help me to do that, and that shows how fast his mind whirs and flickers and how chaotic things are. So I hope that what I've written there is a grade 9 PE paragraph, but I hope you really see that when you break it down, it's not beyond anyone. It's just written in a way with a very clear structure that I hope is helpful. If you would like to see a bit more here, then you can look at a couple of links. This is about a set designer, sometimes called scenic designers. So working in the theatre as a set designer, brief video there. And then I know people start thinking I love the musical Wicked, and I promise you I don't. But they made some good videos from various theatre technicians, including their set designer there, talking about the concept. And then finally, if you'd like to do a task to help you to be active and just practice this, draw a set design for a play you studied in school, or create a collage of images of sets from a play that you know. So if you just Google, for example, Hedda Gabler set and find 10, 15 images of various set designs, and you'll see, firstly, that there's many ways to do this, and secondly, that it is that you then can interpret, steal ideas from them, take bits from various set designs that you can then talk about in your essays, and then write a PEE paragraph outlining the set decisions you would make as a set designer using some of the key set design terms that we mentioned in this lesson. So I hope some of you are keen to go and do a bit more. Stop presenting there. Some of you are keen to do a bit more and to go into the task and follow those links, and that's been useful. And I look forward to tomorrow's lesson.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Gary. Really, really appreciate it, buddy.
Absolute pleasure. No problem at all. I hope you have a good day in streaming school.